Hey guys, thanks for joining us on another Bikini TV. I'm Adam from TeamElitePhysique.com, and I am here with Robin Maher, IFBB pro turned promoter of the Wasatch Warrior turned national level judge. And we're going to be covering some cool topics today. Really excited to talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So on today, I wanted to go over a few things because one of the cool things that you've done that a lot of people haven't is taking your career and kind of reach the highest level of bikini and going to a pro. And then you're like, hey, I want to make a career out of this. And now you're doing your own promotion and you jumped all the way into judging. I mean, is there anything you haven't done yet in the world of NPC IFBB at this point?
Well, yes, because my ultimate goal is to become a pro league judge.
Okay.
IFBB pro league level. Yeah, so that's my ultimate goal, obviously, to be at that.
Well,
But
tell me about that. How does one who may be out there thinking of doing this get to that level? And I guess you sound like the type that once you get to the level of being a pro level judge, you're going to be like, okay, now I want to be Olympia level judge.
obviously, yeah.
How does one take those steps, and going into that judging?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you can, anyone can volunteer or ask about judging in their particular state that they're in, because that's something that's overseen by the NPC chairman of each state. So you can always volunteer and, contact that person and ask them more about it. But there is a whole process to it. Like, for example, in my state, the way we did it was you had to test judge. I believe it was at least three NPC competitions, and they score you in each and every division. Like, you judge all the divisions. And so you get your score back, just like you're back in, high school, and you can see your accuracy, your percentage that you get. And you have to score at a certain level or higher. I believe it's like 86%, 88%. It's fairly high, like your level of accuracy that you need to have. So there are people who, volunteer to do that and may not make that cut or pass, but then there are others that do. And there's no requirement to be, a pro athlete or necessarily have competed in X number of NPC shows or anything like that. It's really like anyone who loves the sport and wants to be part of it could. You just have to prove, obviously, that you have the knowledge and the expertise to be able to do that.
Okay, well, that's pretty cool. I actually did that myself in Colorado a long time ago. So yeah, the test judging, I always thought it was kind of fun, but it's nice to see, like, on the back end, especially for competitors to hear like that, especially at the NPC level. It's not just Joe you pulled off a squat rack who, knows a little bit about bodybuilding that you had judge bikini. Like, he was actually met a criteria for that. So that's pretty cool to, like, at least for the people to hear that that's part of it,
Yeah. So, yeah. And I like to tell people that, like, in our area, we're always looking for more judges because we want, a big pool of people to be able to choose from. You want some diversity. And so people are available to do that and they're interested in it. I always encourage them to, contact our chairman here locally, and, they can test judge. And like I said, just based on the scores, we're only going to move people on, obviously, as they're, deemed fit, as they show that they have that knowledge, that's necessary. And then the athletes know that they have qualified judges who know what they're doing, and there's a process and a protocol to it, which I think as an athlete is very, comforting to know. Like you said, it's not just, some dude, so-and-so's friend from down the street, or someone that's, a lot of people think it's political. They think things are, they're connected to certain teams or certain sponsors, and it's just not true.
Yeah. Like, I love the political one. That's so funny. Me and my friend James, we always, like, whenever he wins or I win, he's like, oh, that's politics. Like, we just mess with each other. It's like the funniest thing, because the judges have, especially at the NPC level, have no idea who they coach with. Like, no one knows. Like, it's very rare they even know at a pro level. There's just too many people, like, who they are. And it's pretty rare that they even know, like, unless it's like someone like, me and Ashley or something, because we do so much together. Like, they just don't know, and they don't care even if they do. It's not like it matters. It's people put too much into that. So if someone's telling you, just so you guys know, you're hearing it from a judge, hearing it from me who's got a ton of experience. If someone tells you, hey, it's politics, like, know that they do not know. But I will say, the top coaches, they do produce generally the top results. You'll see a lot of guys like, Odo's got a big team. He gets a lot of wins. They're like, oh, it's politics. They're like, no, he's just good at his job, and he's got a lot of athletes, so you see him more often. That's how it goes.
Right. That's part of its statistics, right? A lot of those bigger teams, like yourself, or like you mentioned, Kimoto, they're going to have more athletes in a show. And a lot of those teams, like you're there in Las Vegas, right? Every particular area is going to have like a bigger team, right? Or a coach who might be a little bit more successful or more well known. And generally they have more athletes in the show. So statistically, more athletes are going to place.
Yeah, and
And
also
people tend to think that it's political or it's associated with that
yeah, and
team. It's really just numbers.
on top of that, when you get to a higher level of coaching, you get better athletes too. So people don't understand that, like, because people will start off with a small coach at their gym, and then they're like, oh, I want to go to the next level. I need to contact whoever. And so sometimes you just get lucky, as a coach. I'll say that too. Sometimes I'll just get a girl who's pretty much, I just got to, put an inch on her glutes, take a half inch off her waist. And I'm like, okay, hey. And then the next thing it's politics because she joined him. I'm like, no, she was already there. Some, of course, you go from A to Z, but some you go from Y to Z, and you get a lot more of those. The better you are, that you get a lot more Y's and X's to Z's than you do when you first started. That's for sure. So yeah, that's fun. I'm glad that actually jumped off into the subject, because that's the one that people really do need to hear. It's never the coach. It's always your body, and the judges never know who your coach is. It's especially at the NPC level. Like they do not know, they do not care, and there's no reason for them to care. It just doesn't matter.
Exactly. I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to know. I don't want someone to say, this is my friend. They're competing this, because again, doesn't matter to me. It's not going to affect any scoring, but the less I know, the better. In fact, so when we get our score sheets, and I don't know if every state and show does it the same, but we literally just have a number. I don't have a name. So even if someone did try to say, oh, my friend, Ashley, whatever, is competing, look for her. Cause people do try and do that sometimes. And I'm just like, I don't care. I don't need to know. Yeah. So I wouldn't even have any idea. Like you said, the team, what their name is, or like their experience. Like I like to tell people, like, I don't even know if you just won an overall in, New York last week and you're competing in Utah this week. We don't have any history, any background. And to add to that point, we don't know how many, Instagram followers you have. Like, we don't care about social media. That's not going to, make someone win an award just because they have, followers on social media. It all comes down to your physique.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a really funny conversation with this athlete once, because there was a coach. Obviously, he's not like that successful. He's like, oh well, Adam, greases the pockets of whatever judge. And I was laughing. I was like, now I'm not saying that I'd be above doing that if it was an option, but it's just not an option. And I couldn't imagine going up to a judge and being like, hey, like, how would you even get that conversation started?
Right.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I'm not above it if it was an option. So funny. They're cracking up. I was like, yeah, that doesn't happen. That's not a thing. So funny. But now going into obviously your judging career. So you started off at a local level. You went to a national level. So you're a national level judge. How does one, and this is good for the pros to hear too, and for the national level competitors now. Okay, so you have your local level, and this is, people don't seem to understand this. There's different levels of competitors. You have your local level, national level, pro level, Olympia level competitors, but you also have the same for judges, and I think that it's important for people to know you kind of graduate to these things, and you don't just, come off the squat rack, pass one test, and you're judging the Olympia. Like it's a process. And so with you going to even a national level, how did that process go to get there? So the national level competitors know, hey, there's a better pool of people. I'm getting more accurate results.
Right. Yeah. So once, you feel like you're qualified or you're at that level. So for me, I did that 2 years ago in Phoenix at the USA's. So by that point, I've been judging over about 5 years. I think I started judging in 2016, 2015. And so, I felt like I had a pretty good handle on it, right? I know what I'm looking for, and you want to be aware of like what's happening on the national level, right? Not just like your local stage, because, across the board, you're not going to get the same thing, right? In California or Louisiana or Miami. And I don't mean to say that like the physiques are different or they're judged differently. I just mean like, you want to have some good experience, right? Like not just in your little hometown. But so once I got to the point where I felt like I was ready for that, I reached out to, we have our big national level shows like with Gary Udit and, some of those that are hosting and promoting those shows, right? And obviously all this goes through the head office, the national, NPC office. So obviously President Jim Mannion and, Tyler Mannion are going to be the ones that ultimately give you that permission and that okay. And then it's a matter of arranging it with the promoters of that event. So that's what I did, and reached out to, Sandy Williamson was the one that was, scheduling and choosing the judges at that show, at that event in Phoenix. So they said to me, okay, yes, we've set this up. You have permission to test judge at this show. And so I arrived and, they gave me like very particular, score sheets and things to do. And I was expecting it to be pretty intense, but it was, I have to admit, like even more intense than I thought it would be. It's almost like taking like an ACT or an SAT, for like your college career. Like it's a big deal. And clearly you want to score well and, show that you know what you're doing. But it's really fast, so on the national level, like I had to keep up with, how quick that judging moves. There's so many bodies on stage, right? Compared to an NPC show. One of the things we had to do in particular that was really challenging was we had to choose our top 5 like immediately before any call outs happened or any comparisons. So with every group that came up, we had to write down our top 5 and then pass it in, like turn it in before whoever was head judging at that moment, showed who their top picks were for that group. Does that make sense?
That's pretty, actually, I could judge a show pretty good at this point, and I've done it, but picking the top 5 out of 30 girls before comparisons would be a challenge.
Oh,
like,
yeah. And it was more than 30 in a lot of those groups, This is classic physique. This is men's physique. This is women's, fitness, every division. So
that'd be tough. I don't think, that'd be tough. I wonder how I would do that. I would love to see how I would score against like a Sandy, because I probably would. I think picking 1, 2, and 3 is pretty easy. 1 and 2 is always pretty there. Like
stand out.
Obvious, right? But 3, 4, 5, 6, those are pretty tough. That's pretty. They all look kind of blend together, like 4 through 10. So that would be tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
yeah, so that was super challenging, and I didn't know we were going to have to do that. So yeah, that day, Steve Weinberger was judging at one point. Sandy was judging at one point. Tyler was judging at one point. Attila. So you had different head judges. And obviously we want consistency across the board, but those were different divisions as well. Those different judges were judging, but that was kind of fun. It was a fun challenge. So we did that, and then obviously scoring the whole group, and then you turned in all those scores, and then all of that's literally like I said, it's almost compared to like a, an ACT or an SAT. Like they went off and scored all of those different divisions for accuracy. And so I was super happy when I got that email that said, congratulations, you passed, you're a national level judge now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I feel like in that scenario, it might be easier to pass as a pro judge than a national level judge, just because of just the sheer volume of people you run into at a show, right?
Yeah.
Bikinis, what is going to have at a bikini show? 40 people sometimes times 8 classes. So
right.
Versus 30 at a pro show. That's it might actually be easier.
Yeah. So, but I mean, at least just like a pro show, we only had to score up to, 15 or so. After 16, everyone ties. So,
yeah. So, okay, going into judging, I think this is a fun one to talk about too, especially because you're a bikini pro. You're right. The bikini division has evolved at this point. I don't know. What's your current status as a bikini pro? Like, so
I'm not competing anymore. Yeah. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Like, when was your last competition? And
so my last one was in 2019. So I competed in Puerto Rico, and I competed at the Legends Classic, the muscle contest show that year. So my highest placing in the open was 9th. I placed 9th at the Legends that year at muscle contest. I was super proud of just being a masters competitor, sometimes you're on stage with these beautiful girls, half your age. So I was super proud of that placing. But yeah, after that, obviously, as we all know, a lot of shows, became delayed and everything going into 2020. So it was around that time that I just decided, what, I'm going to call it on competing. I've had a good run, about 5 years of competing as a pro. Love it, but I'm just going to focus on judging and promoting my show and just making that like the best.
Okay, cool. So as a national level judge now, obviously it's evolved a little bit since you've been competing too. What would you say the current criteria is for bikini for someone who's saying, okay, I want to go to nationals, I want to go from NPC to nationals, or I guess NPC is nationals, but I want to go to the national stage, eventually get a pro card. What do I need to be looking at as a criteria for 2023? Like, what am I looking at in terms of, my lines, my muscularity? What are you looking for as a judge, as a description for people maybe watching this and trying to figure that out?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand exactly what you mean by that, because I feel like with the criteria with bikini, tends to be about the same, right? As far as like, do you mean like in particular where we'll talk about, like shoulders, but not capped, like we don't want to see striations in the glutes, like things like that?
Yeah, exactly. Like just to get a good synopsis of what a national level judge would be looking for to give a pro card to someone going from, competing in a local show and what they should be prepared for to go into to like a national show.
I mean, and that's tricky because honestly, as you and I know, like really it shouldn't be all that different, right? Whether it's a local show or like a national level show. But we tend to see clearly if you're national level and you're qualified to compete at that level, you're going to see a higher caliber of athletes on that stage, typically,
Yeah.
right? Not to say that we don't see a first time competitor at an NBC show come in sometimes with like a blow you away, national level physique. I've seen that in like the true novice category before at a show where you're like, where did this person come from?
Yeah.
They apparently were a true novice and never competed, but they just came in like one and done and take the show. I've seen someone do that before where they won the bikini overall and came in as a true novice competitor. But yeah, so I don't feel like the criteria is drastically different, but yeah, to your point, like we generally are going to look for, the shape in the glutes as far as like that fullness and that roundness, right? The good development, but not striated, like not so, lean or super shredded where, we start to feel like it's like too hard is typically the word that people will use, right? In the bikini category.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we see people come in like almost like too lean and then they start to look like stringy.
Yeah.
Is a term we'll kind of use. And so that emphasis for sometimes like newer athletes, or maybe those that are less experienced, sometimes they're just really focused on being lean, lean, lean. Like I want to be my leanest on stage, right? Or that lower body fat percentage. And that's not always going to be your best physique on stage, yeah. Right? Like we still want to see that fullness in the glutes and in the shoulders, obviously like we're looking for that shape in bikini, that the curves in, from your shoulder to your narrow waist, right? And those full glutes. And nothing is going to be like overdeveloped or stand out too much, right? Because even as we've seen sometimes, like we get a little obsessed with our booty and building the booty and bikini, but there is a point where that can even be like too dominant or too maybe like overtrained.
Yeah.
And we want all of that to be in the right proportion with everything else.
Okay, cool. So yeah, good for people to know, especially on the conditioning one. One thing I've kind of been using the term for a while, pretty muscle. I always say, it needs to be pretty muscle, not, and everyone's like, well, what's pretty muscle? And I'm like, well, and this is a kind of a crude way of describing it, but it's the only way I could kind of come up with, but I always kind of refer to it because people always know this. Like when I say it, they understand it.
Okay.
I'm saying, so pretty muscle is kind of like, if you see like a horse walking and you see all those like striations in their hips when they walk, you see it, like all those fibers and you see all that is too much. It's like if you're starting to see that when a girl's walking, the striations, that's where you left pretty muscle. So the pretty muscles, full, like Maureen, where it's full, but there's not striations. It's like a vibrant, good skin tone. It's full. It doesn't look overly dieted down, that type of thing. So that's
looks
kind of
feminine. Yeah. Like there's a little bit of softness to it, right? Even though we don't mean soft by being like, not conditioned enough on stage, but more, yeah, I agree with you. It's got that feminine look. It's still a little bit soft.
Yeah. It's just that I always like, if you could look at, I always say, think about like a construction worker who's always in the sun and he's got like those crazy vascularity and deep grooves in his muscle, that construction blacksmith worker type of muscle, like that dense, deep grooves. Like you don't want that in bikini. That's not pretty muscle. So that's kind of how I kind of coined it.
I like that. I haven't heard that term before. I'm going to steal that now.
No, good. Do it. I've been using it for a while.
To you.
Pretty muscle. Yeah. Pretty muscle. So I feel like that's an easy one for people to understand when you describe what pretty muscle isn't, then they can kind of just understand what it is, So,
right.
Anyway, so I really like that we're doing this interview because obviously you went from bikini pro to judge to now having your own show, which I have here, the Wasatch Warrior Hammer.
The sledgehammer, yes.
That Ashley has. We have two of them in this office, which is awesome. And she, we'll probably be doing that show again this year. So
yeah.
And one thing we need to put out there. So first off, this is going to be a team show for us this year. I think we have a few team shows a year where we'll get athletes from all over the country and they kind of come out and they have a good time with the other Team Elite Physique athletes. So we'll be there and hopefully we'll have a fun crew there that's everyone's having a good time. But I think a lot of people see, someone like Ashley or whatever doing the Wasatch Warrior and know that it's a pro show. but sometimes people don't know it's a pro-am show. And
Right.
it is an NPC and an IFBB show, not just an IFBB pro show. And that show seems to be growing every year, right?
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's 8 years now. This is the 8th year of the show. So it's very well established. I have a lot of athletes that come back year after year, both amateurs and pro athletes, which I just absolutely love. Like, that's the biggest compliment an athlete can give to me, is saying, like, I love the show. I'm going to keep coming back every year. Like, I have a great experience. Like, that is exactly why I started promoting and originally wanted to promote a show. I just wanted athletes, like, as an athlete myself, I knew what it was like, being on that side of things. And I just wanted it to be like a fun event. I mean, competing is always going to be a little bit stressful, but I try to make it as stress-free as possible for the athletes, and try to, make it just really organized, put out information well ahead of time, and just so they know, like, where they're going and where they need to be, right? And when is check-ins. And I just know, as an athlete, that's super helpful when, we can control as many variables as we can, right? There's certain things we can't control, but I feel like when you're, organized and you're in control of everything as an athlete, that's going to lend itself to having, like, the best experience possible and having a fun time, whether you go home with that first place trophy or not, right? You can still have fun and still have a good time.
Yeah. And that's, it's funny. You touched on something there where you said, some athletes do it every year. And, you'll see someone like Ashley who does it every year, but, she's competing, 10, 15 times, whatever, at the rest of the shows.
Right.
But you don't think about the NPC guy who just does that one show once a year. And people don't realize that that's a thing. That's a really common thing. I've had that happen for years, where I'll have, like, the same guy do the same show for like 6 years. I think I have one guy's done it for like 6 years straight. And he never wants to go past that. He's just happy doing the NPC show. But for him, it's like, no, it's just one time a year. It just helps me stay in shape. Like, it gets me in shape, gives me a goal, a time-based deadline to get in shape too, gets me ready for summer. And that's all it is. I don't want to go pro. He's a career guy. He's like, yeah, I don't need anything past my career. I'm good. And I just want to have fun with this and get in shape once a year. So I think that,
Yeah, and that's awesome. Like, no one said you
super
have
awesome.
to go pro, right? You can
Yeah.
love competing and be a part of the sport. That doesn't mean that, it doesn't count, or you're not good enough if you don't. Like, you think about people who run marathons, like, not everyone wants to qualify for Boston. Like, some people
Yeah.
go run a 6-hour marathon and they're perfectly happy doing it. They love running, and they keep doing it, right? Maybe one marathon a year, same kind of thing, right? It gets you in shape, get to be part of the sport. Sometimes they love the camaraderie and the experience of getting up on stage. So yeah, that makes me so happy. Like, I love it when people tag me on pictures with, like, all their trophies in a row, or, like, all their medals.
Yeah, I love that part of it. I think, especially with you being a pro, and me, obviously coaching people at a high level, people think, oh yeah, they don't really, like, care about that. But I think I get so much joy out of the transformation girl who's, like, actually accomplished her goals. And I always say it's fun. Both are fun, but they're fun in their different ways. When you get someone who's in really, really good shape, and then you get them into better shape to go to a show, it's fun because it's challenging me versus other coaches, right? And the athlete, it's challenging them to win the whole show when they're at that level, right? So that's kind of where the fun is, right? It's harder, it's more challenging for me. It forces me to be a better coach. But when you take someone from who didn't have the confidence that they wanted to, that they could have had, to having their dream body, and even if they placed, 10th out of 10, but they're their best they've ever been, like, that's so rewarding, and it's fun in a different way. And I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
that needs to be out there more, right? Like, we need to hear more about people doing your show once a year, getting in shape for summer, like these things. I think that needs to be out there more, that we want it to happen. I think you're on the same page. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we love all those people. I mean, we want all of you there. It's not, and like you said, I think a lot of people focus on the pros, right? Or they'll sometimes say, like, think that they're not good enough to compete on that stage. And I have to remind them, like, listen, first of all, you're not on stage at the same time as the pros, right? The amateurs go on at one point, the pros come on at another point. No one is comparing you to the pro athletes that are up there, right? It's a completely different thing. Like, so get that out of your head, right? Like, sometimes that can be a little bit intimidating to people. But no, every single person that comes, like I told you, like, I love it. I'll be at the gym, here locally sometimes, and someone will come up to me and be like, you don't know me, but I did your show 2 years ago. Like, and they're, like, wearing the t-shirt or something like that. And I absolutely love that. Like, that means a lot to me. It really does. Cause there's a lot of shows out there. There's shows in all different cities every weekend of the year, right? And so that's the other reason I try to make my show a great experience and make it really fun for everybody, is because I know that they have options and they can go do a show anywhere else. But it's amazing to me. Like, I've had I've had people this last year, there was people from 25 different states
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
that
Half
registered
the
for my
country.
show, going through the NPC registration. Yeah. So it is incredible for me to see that, we've got people from Texas, we've got people from Pennsylvania, we've got people, not to mention the, international athletes that are coming for the pro portion, but that's so fun for me to have all these different people coming from all different places.
Yeah. And I think one of the things to talk about at your show too, especially for people who are trying to get to the next level, you're going to have all levels of competition there, but you're going to have national level competitors at your show, especially with the time frame of it being. The date of your show exactly is what date exactly?
April 15th.
Yeah, it was April. I didn't know remember the date off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that time frame, you have all of your national shows are going to be starting up pretty soon. So you're going to have some girls that are ahead of the game getting ready and trying to get their qualification. And you're going to have some people, it's kind of like that good in-between show, because you get the shows that are in like June and July, like those girls are pretty much going to USA's, and they're kind of trying to qualify again because they're going to those shows. But in April, it's kind of like right in the middle of where the national shows are, like the big national shows. And so you have some girls that are ahead and like, yeah, I just need to qualify. And then you have some girls that are just doing their first one. So it's a really good like starting point to go to on that show versus like a show like the last weekend of June. It's like that girl's going to go to Universe and then USA's and then North Americans. Like you're going to run into some real national level competition at those. So it's different for each, that you kind of get the best of both worlds there. And I would say it's a pretty good sized show too. So it gives you a good challenge. But on top of that, it's a pro show. So you're going to have pro judges on panel. So you get in front of those judges and really find where you're at, which is, I always say, if you're trying to get to the next level, you got to get in front of the judges that are going to be judging you at the next level so they can give you some real feedback on what you need to work on to be where you want to be. So
yeah, it's true. Most of the judges on my panel, I mean, I fly them in from all over, right? So again, they're not local judges. We usually have like one or two local judges sometimes because we want to like fill out that panel or maybe have an alternate. But pretty much every judge that's on my panel each year judge at national shows. So they're going to probably be on your panel at, North Americans or Masters or, Universe and all these shows that you're mentioning. So like you said, it's a great opportunity to get in front of those judges and get their feedback. And then you do have time to fine tune some things, right? Before going to those pro qualifying shows.
Yeah. So now what else? So at your show, I guess, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here and I don't mean to, but like, let's say I'm a competitor doing one show and I'm a competitor going to your show. I guess what would be the differentiating factors of like why I would go to your show versus a regular show? And I think this is important for people to know, like, hey, your shows that you pick are all ran by different promoters. You're going to get something different at all of them. And what would be kind of the Wasatch Warriors thing there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the things that I think are unique, obviously, first of all, like I'm partial to Utah and Salt Lake City because I think it's gorgeous. Like I think if you're traveling to a show, if you're choosing, from all the other ones that are out there, I personally love to travel and I want to go someplace that's like beautiful and scenic. So it's very unique that way. You've been here, Adam. I mean, you've lived in Colorado too, right? So you've been spoiled with mountains, but the mountains.
I would say the mountains in Salt Lake City though are it's just, I think you're just closer to there and they seem higher or closer. I don't know. I saw them, I was like, man, these mountains are like they're like 3D. The mountains in Denver, they're like far enough away where they're kind of more of a landscape, like kind of too far away. But yours are kind of like right in your face. So I saw them, and then I was you have good scooters and good food. If they have scooters, I'm all over town on scooters.
We have scooters all, and so that's the second thing I was just going to point out is the show takes place downtown, right there in downtown Salt Lake City. It's 10 minutes from the airport. Like it is so fast and close and easy to get to, which again, like I pointed out earlier, when those things are convenient and you're an athlete traveling, right, the closer things are, the more convenient it is to get things can actually make a big difference, right? When you're traveling possibly across country, or maybe you're bringing your food with you and you got a lot of luggage or whatever, you can just fly in and then get to your host hotel. For me, that's always was a big deal in competing. So I think that's a great feature. And then not to mention good food, like Salt Lake, like people love their food here. Like we're big foodies. So right there downtown where the show is, there's just like a million good places right around every corner that you can. And I actually make a list usually every year. I often have it at the front desk. Sometimes I'll attach it to an email. I'll try to do that this year when I send out like email invites to all the pros, but I actually have like a food list that gives some recommendations. Because food's a big deal, right? When you've competed, like you want to go and celebrate and enjoy. But yeah, we're literally like a block away from like where like all the restaurants and bars are that are open all night. So it's just really easy to get done with the show. And it's not going to be one of those places where like everything is closed at 9 o'clock. Like you're right downtown. So everything's open like, hours and hours after the show. You're good. So that's kind of fun. So we've got fun places, burger places, Nacho Daddy, whatever you want to go get, sushi, it's going to be right there. So that's also like a really fun thing as an athlete. And then the next thing is I really try to inundate these athletes with swag. Like I know how much athletes love their swag and love to get like a loaded bag with all that good stuff. So every athlete gets the, show t-shirt, amateur and pros alike. Pros do get a hoodie, which I love seeing Ashley wear that. She's always posting the hoodie from my show when she's traveling, that Wasatch Warrior hoodie. So I try to get something a little bit special on top of that for the pros, because I do recognize that they're typically traveling from farther, possibly even internationally. So I want them to have something to take away from the show, to be a good memory, and kind of show my gratitude for them being there. But for all athletes, yeah, just tons of swag. Like last year, like whether it was Celsius, West Coast Confections, like tons of good to go bars. I mean, you name it. Like we get as much stuff in that swag bag. So those athletes just, really, really feel like, we appreciate them being here. I'm hearing stories lately of athletes saying like there wasn't even a show t-shirt. They didn't even get a swag bag at all. And I don't know. I kind of feel like that's like a requisite thing that every athlete should get.
I would say, yeah, it used to be like most shows, but now it's like a lot of shows just don't have anything, shirts or swag bags. I would say like it's probably like 50% now. They don't have that too.
It's just
Which
kind
is
of weird to me. I don't know. And it can be a lot of work. Like as a promoter, that's me reaching out to these different companies I have relationships with. It's people don't realize when you have like 300 plus athletes, to stuff swag bags and like I have pallets of things coming in, like it's kind of a lot, right?
yeah, you need a
But
team to assemble it all.
it's yes, for sure. Like I have a great crew that helps to do that. But my point is just like it's worth it to me. And I feel like I just appreciate what these athletes are putting in to the show, like the investment of their time, what they're paying to be part of the show. So I just want to give them the quality back that I feel like they deserve. Like I see athletes as like, I'm in the hospitality business, right? If I had a Marriott hotel and you're coming to stay at my hotel, like I want you to have a 5-star experience. So
Well, that's cool. Yeah, it's funny thing is about the shows that don't have shirts. I kind of miss those because there was a time where it was in Denver at Jeff's shows, and it was just a few shows, but it was really cool. I wish it would have taken off, but it didn't take off too much. But when they had the lighter colored shirts, so they'd have like a white colored shirt or a gray shirt or whatever. Some of the girls and some of the men's physique guys would just go around to like people that they met that were their friends or coaches or people they followed on YouTube or whatever, or their teammates, and then have them sign the shirt.
oh,
And
okay.
it was kind of cool. And so like you'd have a girl with like had all her class sign it, right? Her whole
Yeah.
like whatever people were in their class, and like she wore it to the gym and that sort of thing. I know it's stupid, but it's kind of
I
one of those
never
memory
saw
things.
that. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's one of those memory things where it's like cute and you look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that girl, and like that type of thing. And that's what people don't understand too, is like the more fun and more organized the show is, the less stressful it is, the more you're gonna meet people backstage, you're gonna have fun. And some of these girls make these lifelong friends.
Oh yeah, some of my best friends ever. Yeah, it's from competing together and like just bonding backstage and having a good time together.
Yeah, and it's cool when it's organized like that. I think yours is in the host hotel too, right? So there's
Yes.
no travel, which is another thing people don't think about. Sometimes the host hotel, and it's something that especially if you're a competitor and you have the option of staying in the host hotel, do that. Stay in the host hotel, because what'll happen is you can't control the weather, and if you have your tan, your hair, your makeup, and you're in your hotel, and then you got to go outside to an Uber, and there's no, you have to walk through rain sometimes. It could be a total nightmare. The rain can cause the frizzing of your hair and all that. And so when you could just walk downstairs, it's just so nice. It's such a nice thing.
Yeah. And that way too, you can like just go upstairs and rest between, morning and night show, or put your feet up. And it's not, so much run around and travel and
yeah,
exactly.
So people too at your show, you have a live stream on your show for the amateurs?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's good too. Because a lot of shows don't have that. And I think it's real important for people who are traveling for shows, whose family wants to see the show. I think it's a big miss. Like in today's technology days, I'm like, I don't know why you wouldn't have a live stream at every show, especially because you can make money on it as a promoter. There's no reason not to at least justify that, minor expense to give people the option of having their families watch from a different state, So
Oh, for sure. And I even have like locals that will, post pictures and tag me on it that they're streaming just because they're at their kid's football game, or, they would love to be there if they could, but they're like diehard fans of the sport. So they will even purchase live stream, just right here in town. So
yeah,
yeah, for sure have the live stream available. Definitely.
it's an important one too, especially for when you have like, let's say grandmas and grandpas that are, they might not be able to be, they don't want to sit there for 5 hours through all night show and get to bikini class, and the H
Yeah.
class bikini girls on at 9:30 at night. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it is what it is. There's a lot of people at the show. It's going to take a long time. So it's like, it's nice for them to have it at the house. So yeah. So thanks for doing that. So anyway,
Yeah.
going with that. So we went over your career as a bikini pro. We went into your judging and we went into your show promoting. But we didn't go into is how did you even get to that point? So if someone is in, and I like that you did this because there's a lot of people that are in the fitness industry that think that, once they compete and they're done, they're like, that's it, I'm done. I don't have anything else to do. But I'm like, there's so many avenues
Oh
that
yeah.
you go into for
You can
your
be
career in
involved.
fitness. And how did
Mhm.
you decide that you wanted to do that? And do you do anything else in fitness too? I mean, I know that you do obviously the judging and the shows, but do you do anything else too?
As far as you mean like professionally, like I am a
Yeah.
coach and trainer. Yeah.
Okay.
So I do posing clients, like as long as they're not competing in any shows I'm judging in, I can work with posing clients, which I love to do. And I do some of those through Zoom, and some of them are one-on-one right here in town, like in person. Um, and then I also put on usually like 1 to 2 workshops a year. So I'm really passionate about that just because I love like kind of like educating people, and especially helping out people who are just getting into the sport. Cause I just know like at the time that I was just started competing, and this is like 10 plus years ago now. But there just wasn't a lot of that happening at the time. So it was really kind of, there was a big learning curve because you might do a couple shows or compete a few times, and you kind of almost had to figure out by trial and error, like what to do, what not to do. And there just wasn't as much resources as far as, teaching you the basic information, and even just talking about like tanning and prepping your skin and like getting the right fit on your bikini and all those little details that really matter.
Yeah. And actually that's a good point too. We have opposing class this weekend, April, February. It's February 11th when is the posing class. If you're watching this past it, February 11th, we have a full workshop. But yeah, I've been doing those for 10, 11 years now, something like that. I remember I did one
Awesome. You were
every
in my area. Where were you when I needed you, Adam?
every Saturday in Denver for 8 years. I think I did one besides like during December. I think it was the only time I didn't. But yeah, those are huge for just people learning. It's fun to meet new people, see who's coming up in the NPC. So I'm glad that you're doing that too. So, but how did you get to the show though? How did you get to being a show promoter? How's that transition work for people who maybe want to do that?
Well, yeah, that's a lot harder than you'd think. Like there's a lot of people, sometimes people will come up to me at a show and be like, "Oh, hey, I want to do that." Yeah. So like I'm gonna tell, and I'm like, "Oh, good luck."
Yeah.
Because it's really not that simple. Like you can't just like come forward and just be like, "Hey, I want to do a show," and like they just hand it to you. Like obviously, it took some time. Like I came forward at the time that I kind of contacted, the head office and expressed the interest in doing that. There was no pro show in Utah. There was no IFBB pro. So mine is the first ever IFBB Pro League event in the state of Utah,
Oh, I didn't know
which
that.
I'm
That's pretty cool.
super excited about. I'm very proud of that. Yeah. So that was a big part of it. And that's actually how I initially got the event, is because I just said, hey, like I can do this. I had to like there was a lot of communication back and forth. I would say at least like 6 to 9 months, if I had to guess. And discussions about it, and like where would you hold it, and kind of going through some of those basics, and before I finally kind of got the okay and the permission to do it. And so when it first started, the very first year, it was actually only a pro event. There was no NPC the first year.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I don't think people realize how much work goes into it too. I've co-promoted 2 shows myself.
oh
Back up
yeah.
like, years ago, I was like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this part of it too. Like I was coaching already and I was like, yeah, I could do it. And so I co-promoted 2 shows that were already existing, and I like jumped full on in, everything I do 100%. And I was like, man, this is so much work. Like I didn't realize it was like a full-time job to do this small local
Yeah.
show, and it's like people don't understand. Like I can't even imagine doing a pro show, but how much actual work goes into it, and the promoting of it, and going to the gyms and giving them flyers and having seminars and getting your goodie bags together and getting sponsors to buy booths and this and that. I'm like, this is crazy. This is a full-time gig, like full
A
time
lot
gig.
of detail, a lot of moving parts. Yeah, I mean, the best comparison I've ever heard is it's like a wedding, because the thing is, it's all that work involved, like you just described, but it also everything has to culminate and like come together perfectly at like one specific time.
Yeah,
So, which is just that added pressure, right? Because there's a deadline, there's a timeline, but there's certain things that are sometimes like out of your control, or like some vendor doesn't deliver your, say, trophies on time, or like there's all these things that inevitably are possibly going to go wrong no matter how far in advance you've ordered those trophies or what have you, right? Like people are human, sometimes things don't go according to plan. So that's been the big learning curve, like for me, is just like adjusting to the fact that, like, okay, I can be super well organized and very well prepared, but everything isn't always going to go exactly as I wanted to, but you just, you do your best. And after, at this point for me, like 8 years in, right, it's kind of just like clockwork. Like I start way in advance. Like you said, people don't realize how much work goes into it. I mean, I'm like in the fall, I start prepping things, right? Making changes to the website, contacting sponsors, all that good stuff. And then like by January, I'm paying my sanctions to the pro league, to even hold the show. So I've put in, a good $15,000 or so at this point, just to like have permission to have the show. Like that's like nothing else, aside, like just that. And then, when you have the pro show, there's also like, prize money involved, and but just, yeah, lots of moving parts, so that, as that timeline gets closer and closer, like we're 9 weeks out this Saturday, like to me, that's not a lot of time. Like to
yeah,
me, I'm like, oh, okay, it's go time.
yeah. It'll
That
come
means
quick. I've
like,
I've been part of a lot of shows that were like a mess, that things just happened and it wasn't the promoter's fault, but it looks like it's your fault because there's no, you're the one that's
that's
going to
the
get the
hard
blame of
part.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to get the blame of it. It's just nothing you could do. I remember the one was kind of, it wasn't that bad, but it was just like, so I was like, man, just one thing really throws things off. And what happened was the plaques didn't come in, the trophies came in, but the
Oh.
plaques didn't.
Mhm.
They didn't have the plaques with them, or they lost them, or something happened, right? So they're just giving everyone empty trophies. And then they were writing, they had to go backstage, write down on an
Yeah.
envelope, every client, every person. And it was like, 300 plus people in the show had to write on an envelope 300, like what division, what placing, like after they got off stage. So they had this huge stack of envelopes. And the promoter was like, okay, do not lose these envelopes. And then when they came in, they mailed them out, So it was like the problem solving all the time too. I was like, man, that was,
Oh, yeah. And
yeah,
I feel for that promoter. Like that promoter may have had that order in way in advance, right? And totally prepared. And it might have been the vendor that didn't pull through, right? But who does
yeah,
everyone look at? Like you said, they're all like, what a loser. This guy
yeah,
doesn't have plaques
exactly.
ready.
It's probably sitting at USPS somewhere under a shelf. You know what I mean? The
Probably in
package.
China waiting for the
Yeah, exactly.
boat to
Yeah.
cross.
Yeah, that's fine. I remember there was actually, what's funny is this would be a funny promoter story to you. I've told this to Tarek and Tamer once too. My favorite show I've ever been to in my entire life, counting, I've been to the Olympia since I was a kid, but my favorite show I ever went to in my entire life was this show that Tamer and Tarek threw, that they threw it together in less than 24 hours because of COVID. And it
Wait,
was the
hookah
most,
bar?
oh yeah, the hookah bar,
Oh,
the hookah lounge show. That was forever. I
yes.
don't think I'll ever have a better experience than the hookah lounge show than Tamer and Tarek threw. I mean, it was a party in there. So like it just shows you like what could go wrong. I mean, what's funny is I was living in Denver, but we just bought the gym out here in Vegas. And so my crew was like, yeah, let's go to Vegas. We had like 17 athletes from kind of from all over the States, but a good 8 of them or 10 of them were from Denver. And we all came to Vegas for one of their shows. I forget which, I think it was a Patriots show before it was a pro show. And the city came in during check-ins, and you start seeing everyone whispering, and everyone's whispering, and we're like, and then my athletes were like, do you see what's going on here? It looks weird, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's a little weird. And it was COVID time, so everyone's like,
It
anything
was
can happen.
July 2020. I remember because my show was the same weekend. But
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it
And
was
then
July 11th, 2020.
so me and Ashley are supposed to do like a posing seminar, and they
Yeah,
canceled the seminar, and then like we're like, what's going on? Like, so we don't know what's going on, and they don't want to panic everyone.
you're
But I
right.
guess Tarek and Tamer like went to the city and were like, we have approval, we have this, but they are already closed by that time on Friday night. So they had to like find anywhere that would host it because the hotel said no. And they ended up at some hookah lounge where they threw all the furniture like in a corner, and they let
Yeah.
me in, and I was sitting in because they felt bad. I had, 17 people, I sponsored it, like there was a whole thing. And so they were like, we feel it's not our fault, we feel bad for you. So they let me in, like, because there's only a limited amount of people that could go in. So they let me in there, and I was sitting like behind all these tables and stacked chairs, and like one chair I pulled over and all this stuff in front of me. And they're just doing it on like a live stream, and it's just Tarek Tamer and I think Tarek and Tamer's dad.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they're just having the craziest. They're using the hookah music. They're on their phones, like screaming and making it like a fun thing. The girls are just on like this little tiny stage they got from some girl's house.
No
That's a
way.
pro out here, like that she uses for her own little stage.
Proposing or something.
It was so like this thrown together little ghetto show, but it was the funnest show and like the best memory I have, like
I
competing
bet.
ever
And
since.
props to them. I mean, I remember hearing about it because, like I said, my show was the same weekend. I remember hearing about it. I was just like, I mean, I love them, right? And I was just
Yeah.
like, that I feel so bad for them that they're having to go through that, but good for them to just like keep like the show must go on, right?
Oh, dude, he full
Figure
on,
it
and
out.
it's funny. Tamer came to me after the show, and he was like, "Hey, I'm sorry how things went. But we did what we could, you know." And they got the show done. At the very end, the city came in, even though it was legal for them to do that in the way that they did it. The city came in and shut down the show at the very end when they were doing the overall. So the overall was judged with no music on, and it was like dead silence while they were talking to the city, just trying to get through it. I think it was like the last two classes in the overall in Bikini, just dead silence. It was so awkward. And then we got done, and everyone's like, "Hey, we got it done," and everyone's like happy they got it done. You know, it was like this celebration, like, "Hey, we beat the city," like even though
Yeah.
they
Like
were fully
we
legal what they were
defeated
doing.
the
And then Tamer came up to me and he was like, "I'm sorry," you know, he's like, he's got tears in his eyes, and he's like, "Adam, I've never been so happy to lose 25 grand in my whole life." I was like,
gosh.
I was like, this is so wild what you guys have to go through to like keep it going. And props to you, because you made it through, through the COVID times too. And I'm sure that wasn't easy. So
Yeah,
uh,
I just postponed. That's why mine was in July that year because it was meant to be in April as it usually is. And then we just had to postpone it.
oh, so yours was, you didn't have to run through too much. You didn't have to run through too much of anything.
No, I mean, it wasn't too bad. Like Utah never really got super extreme with all of that. Like I could still have an audience, but they told me I could only have 200 people in the audience. But every time the staff left the room, I kind of would like tell the guys to like bring more chairs.
You got
So
to do it. I had my gym in Denver. You know how Denver is. And so I kept my gym open the whole time. And I was like, they were like, well, you can't be open. The city came out. And then I ended up hiring a doctor and using his like license in my place to be like, "Oh,
perfect.
we're essential." They're like,
We're a
so,
medical.
yep. So
We
anyway,
all got through somehow. Yeah.
you got to do, what you got to do. So anyway, I guess with that, is there anything you wanted to close with for potential for the athletes, or anything you wanted to say about going to your show or anything like that?
No, just like want to extend that invite. I mean, first of all, thank you for your time and for having me on here because it's been super fun. I appreciate it. Just want to extend the invite to, all the athletes out there that I would love to have you in Salt Lake City and love to have you come and experience, what the Wasatch Warriors like, come and win a sledgehammer overall trophy, best trophy there is, right? And
It's pretty dope. I will admit, this is pretty cool. And it's got some weight behind it too.
it's legit.
Question for you, is this is not just for the pros, but every overall division?
Every overall, yeah. So all the
Okay.
NPC overalls and for the pros. Then we have a massive donut wall where we have some fun pictures of you, Adam, with
Yes.
Ashley. I love some of the pictures we got there. But yeah, it's such a great time, and I'd love to have you guys there. So I just want to extend that invite. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure we can throw my email or my contact information in here somewhere so that people can reach out if they have any questions. But
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll pop it up. So thank you so much for your time. I'll be seeing you in 9 weeks, it sounds like. And
yeah,
yeah, and we'll just go from here. So thank you very much for your time, for being open about judging and helping the competitors. If you guys have any questions that you need to ask, and you do like an assessments after the shows and things like that, when people ask what you need to work on, things like that. Are you
like
at the show for
feedback
that?
and stuff. Yeah,
Okay, cool. So good to know too. So get that feedback from her as a national level judge if you're at her show. You'll keep us in the loop on any workshops and whatnot too. And thank you so much. I'll be seeing you soon.
thanks, Adam. I'll see you soon.